It's Barry Alwaleed, journalist and foreign editor of the Al Hayat newspaper, and David Goldburn, director of philanthropy company Founders Forum for Good, are both here with me. And thank you for being here with me. A fascinating story. We've been talking about it all day upstairs.
It's a good story.
It is a good story. Now, Barry, you know this prince. Tell me a little more about it.
You know, this is quite a very interesting prince. Not only he's very successful, but he has a very interesting life and a very interesting family. His grandfather on his mother's side, his mother is called Mona al-Sulh. Her father is actually the founder of the independence of Lebanon, Riyad al-Sulh, a very, very big figure in the history of Lebanon. His father also is Talal bin Abdul Aziz, you know, the son of the founder, the brother of the present king, King Salman. Also very interesting, some people think also controversial in a way, because he's very much, every now and then he comes up with ideas that don't necessarily agree with the royal family as such. But Alwaleed bin Talal concentrates mostly on the business. Some people believe he might have some political ambitions. I doubt that.
Well, I'll come back to that in a moment, but it's interesting because he's done this sort of work over decades and makes the point it's an intrinsic part of his Islamic faith. He's very clear about why he's doing it.
Yes, but I think it's beyond that as well with Alwaleed bin Talal, because, you know, the Islamic faith, you know, there is a zakat. And a zakat basically advises you to give about 3% of your wealth. But you see, the zakat is not straightforward like with the Christian religion or anything, because if you owe, for example, gold, you should give a zakat for gold. If you are a farmer, you should. So it's a bit more complicated. So the idea of giving to the poor, and that's why today, for example, we are in the month of Ramadan, people give a lot. Alwaleed bin Talal has been giving a lot to around the world, but I would want to talk about Lebanon. In Lebanon, his auntie Layla runs a philanthropic
yes, and they do a lot of work there. David, I mentioned other high-profile figures. I've just put this in perspective. 32 billion. I mean, how does that compare?
It's a lot of money, certainly. But you look at the rest of the world's billionaires, and there's only a couple that have actually given away anywhere near that amount of money. Of course, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have given away somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 million for Buffett and 30 billion for Gates so far. But they are also part of the Giving Pledge, which is a group of billionaires, 137 by the latest count, who have all pledged to give away 50% of their total net worth in their lifetime.
And is it a growing phenomenon or just individuals we're hearing about? It's
certainly a growing phenomenon. I mean, the movement started in 2010, and there was 40 pledgers, and now there's 137, and a new batch is announced every quarter or so.
And you're trying to get people in and to try and help them in these sorts of areas. Just give me an insight into what really motivates them. I mean, clearly there's a greater good here that they're all trying to achieve, but I mean, how much self-aggrandizement, ego is also squeezed in there somewhere?
That's a great question, and one I'm not sure that I have the answer to, but I can tell you what most of the people that we work with at Founders Forum for Good say, is that they want to use their position, their leverage, and their wealth to actually do good in the world. And because they have so much, what's expected is to give it away, because they actually can create change in everything that they touch.
Barry Alwaleed, I'm interested because this is Saudi Arabia now, aspects of that society heavily criticised. It is very interesting, from what the Prince has already said with this money, the sorts of areas he wants to actually see this money spent in, and women's rights and furthering that. I mean, that is interesting, what he's trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. And also it's interesting to mention the difference between giving in Saudi Arabia and giving in the West. In Western countries in general, the tax is, the wealthy people are heavily taxed on their money. In Saudi Arabia, zero tax, there is no tax. So any money that's been given is really given from the heart in a way that is not linked to tax in any way. Alwaleed bin Talal is known having lived with his mom, who's a Lebanese, coming from a society, very, very open society in Lebanon. He was married to Princess Amira, who was also an entrepreneur, who never wore a veil or never wore the abaya when she was abroad. His daughter is educated abroad. So he comes from this background.
So that's weaved into this.
But can I just say one thing about Saudi women? I mean, I was in Saudi Arabia recently, and I just learned that 67% of graduates in universities are women. So the women's problem vis-a-vis the rest of the world is really not known. There is a lot to learn about Saudi women and about
Which is
Saudi
part of his message here as well.
Yes.
David, let me ask you, because you try to get more tech companies involved in this whole area, but interestingly, startups, now, that's almost before they've made money. You're talking about giving it away. Talk me through the logic of that.
So the idea is that technology businesses are changing the world at an astounding rate. There's innovation, there's disruption. You have a group of people who are fundamentally altering how we interact with society and buy goods and services and so on and so forth. And these entrepreneurs are generally quite young, generally focused on growing their businesses, and don't really necessarily have the time to give money right now. But what we're getting them to do is actually make a pledge to give in the future when they have. So setting aside a portion of what their founder equity is to go to charity.
And just briefly, I mean, these spectacular billionaires who are giving away fortunes, I mean, clearly they're stellar businessmen. Does that mean that it translates in terms of getting the money to where they want it to actually go to, as opposed to more conventional ways of giving?
Well, there's lots of ways to give money away now, and the most effective of which are actually when you have donors that get involved in the organizations and the causes that they want to support. So rather than just writing checks and then going about their business, they're actually getting involved in the organizations and lending their business acumen and their support and their profile to do good on a much more substantive level.